Welcome to this week's Admin Chat. I'm Shelley Fishel of Tomorrow's VA, and the topic of my talk today is Microsoft Teams. And when I can get my mouse to play, we'll move on. So before I get stuck into what I want to talk to you about today, you want to know who I am and how qualified I am to talk to you. So my name's Shelley Fishel. I'm an IT trainer with over 20 years experience in the training room and many years experience training online as well. I'm the founder of Tomorrow's VA, which is an online training portal or academy for all things Microsoft Office for VAs, EAs, PAs, all the kind of things that you need to be able to do with Microsoft Office on a daily basis. I have the certificate in design of online learning and the certificate in online learning facilitation, both from the Learning and Performance Institute, of which I'm a fellow. And I recently launched Virtually Amazing, the podcast for virtual assistants. And as I record this, week 2, episode 2 is about to launch. That will be tomorrow. So on to Microsoft Teams. So the question is asked, first of all, what is Microsoft Teams? Well, it's a hub for teamwork. It's an app, it's part of your Office 365 business subscription. And if you're working in a large organization, especially in the recent time of COVID-19, your organization may well be using Teams to collaborate and also even to deliver training. And we're going to see how that works and how it all fits together. In fact, I've been writing a series of articles on Teams for Execcutive Support Magazine. And I wrote one on what is Teams and one on chat in Teams. Which leads me on to point 2 on my slide, which is that you can chat with other members of your team. And you can collaborate on documents with them. You can have online meetings. You can share your screen or share a deck of slides. You can get to your OneDrive files and you can expand the capabilities of Teams with other apps for collaboration. So how are teams made up? What do they comprise? So a team itself is made up of channels, and each channel could be topic or project or department related. And a team itself can have many channels. So let's think about this for a moment. What does that look like? So here we've got Microsoft Teams, the app, and we could have different teams for different purposes or different channels for different purposes. So we could have a design project and we might decide to create a separate team for that project and invite into that team only the people who are going to be working on it. We could have a team for the Christmas party. Again, only the people working on that project. We could have a conference that we're organising and invite people in to help us with that conference. Or it could be that we're booking travel. Now, any of those could be a team by itself, but equally, each of them could be a channel in an overall team. So if you had one which was all about arranging conferences, so you might have a conference team where all the people who worked on conferences live, then you will have perhaps one channel for the Christmas party and another channel for maybe another conference, sales conference, admin conference, or whatever other conference you are creating. There's no absolute hard and fast rule of whether you create a team or a channel, but have a think about whether if it's all the same people, then perhaps it's a channel rather than a team. So who exactly can join a team? Well, anybody at your organisation, people that you work with, anyone with the same company email that you have. So I am Shelley at Tomorrow's VA, and I have a figment of my imagination called Veronica. She's a frog. Anybody who's seen my courses will recognise Veronica. She's Veronica at Tomorrow's VA. So the pair of us can be in any number of teams together very, very easily because we're both at the same organisation. But what about people who are not in your organisation? You want to collaborate also with external people. Well, you can invite guest members. Not a problem at all. There are some settings that you will need to arrange for that, but that's not the subject of today's chat. So what can you do? Well, each channel in each team will have a chat channel. There will be a place to chat and keep track of the discussion where all the members of the team can post their comments, and it keeps all of those one-liner things out of Outlook. You can hold online meetings. Here's one I had recently. I had 4 other people. We were actually learning Excel on this particular one, and they were the 4 people in my online meeting. This was before I shared the screen with them. We can chat with everyone in the channel, as I mentioned before, and that's an image of the chat in my podcast channel. So I have an external member, Jo Brianti, my co-presenter on the podcast. We are both in my Tomorrow's VA podcast team, and we can collaborate here and keep all of our discussions about what we need to do for the podcast in one place. It means that we're not flying emails backwards and forwards all the time, and everything is succinct. So that is my chat. We can also have a private chat. So here's a chat I'm having with Jules. I can choose to chat one-to-one for a private message if I don't want the whole team or the whole channel to know what we're talking about. And it's really very simple to do. I can also turn that chat into a meeting, because at the top of the chat there's the video call button, the call button, and the share screen button. So I can do any of those things in that chat. And a chat can be with one person or with many. When I turn it into an online meeting, the meeting controls will arrive on screen, and this is what they look like. They kind of hover there in the middle of the screen. So you get to see the time remaining, or the time you've been in the meeting, how long you're going, so you can keep an eye on the clock. Very important thing to do. You can turn your camera on or off. You can turn your microphone on or off. You can share the screen. The 3 dots will always give you more controls, things like changing your background or blurring your background or ending the meeting. There is a meeting chat, so as well as a channel having a chat, meetings have chat too, and you can see who's in your meeting, and you can hang up or leave the meeting if you wish. So if you are not the organizer and you've joined a meeting, when you click the hang up button, it's like you're leaving the room and closing the door. Everybody else is still in the meeting until the host ends the meeting. When you share your screen, on the left you can see the screen that shows what I see as the presenter when I click the share screen button, and I can choose to share other elements. So I can choose to share my primary monitor, my secondary monitor, an app or a document that's open, or any of the recent presentations that I've had open, or even a Microsoft whiteboard or an InVision whiteboard. And on the right hand side you can see that's what it looks like when I present a slide deck. That's the slide, and that's what everybody will see, and I'm down there in the bottom corner. So what collaboration methods do you have in Teams? Well, you have chat and meetings. You can share files and work together on those files. You can share files with your team and within a channel. Every channel, when it's made, has a posts area, which we saw earlier, and a files section. And here in the podcast team, I'm looking at the files section, and you can see there's a whole list of folders where Jo and I share what we're working on for the podcast. We can work on documents inside Teams. So here is my structure for a podcast episode that I'm editing, and you'll see that I opened it from the files section, and it opens up live inside Teams, and I can edit here, and I have access to all the formatting, all the styles, anything that I need right from here. I can also open that outside of Teams if I want to. You can also add tabs to your channel. Tabs are ways of adding extra apps and functionality. For example, you could add a website. So if there's a particular site you want everybody in the channel to have access to, you can add a tab with it so that they can get to it quickly. You could add a form using Microsoft Forms. Maybe you want to gather feedback, or perhaps you want to collaborate on designing a form together. And you could add a whiteboard as a tab so that you can all brainstorm right there inside the team. So in summary, it's a hub for teamwork. You can chat with other people, you can collaborate on your documents, have online meetings and share your screen, access your OneDrive files and expand it with other apps for collaboration. And I'm now going to hop in and show you that podcast team and how that looks in reality when it works. Let's take a look at Teams in action, and I'm going to show you around my podcast team. So this is a team between me and an external user, Joe Brianti, who is my co-host. And we coordinate all things to do with our podcast, which is Virtually Amazing, the podcast for virtual assistants, right here in the team. And we hardly have to email each other, which is a real bonus because, like you, I'm sure that my email does get busy sometimes, and so does Joe's. So first of all, let's start at the top and just have a bit of an orientation around what Microsoft Teams is. So up here at the top, we start off on activity. Now, activity is a bit like your notification area. If somebody sends you a message or there's a meeting or something that you miss, you'll see it here in activity. And it will pop up a little red number of how many things you've missed. You can come in here and it will list what you missed. So it might be a chat, it might be a message. It will all show up in this activity area. Along the top here, we've got the new chat icon, more of that shortly. And then up here, we've got a search box. This search box allows you to search for commands or people or things or whatever you want to look for within Teams. Along here, it shows me tomorrow's VA. This allows me to switch between different organizational teams that I'm a member of. So for example, tomorrow's VA is my own team, but I'm a guest member in a Microsoft team, and I'm a guest member in a couple of other teams, organizations run by a colleague, Tim Price, and those two are his. And we test things out and we collaborate, which is great fun. Next to that, I have my icon with my picture. This comes through from my Office account and I can add it, change it here. And this is where I can see all sorts of notifications and settings that I might want to change. So that's along the top. We then, going down the left-hand side after the activity feed, we have chat. And this is where I'll find any one-to-one or one-to-many chats that I have created or initiated. So if I click on the new chat icon and start to type a name, and I'm going to chat with Jules, and I'm just going to say, hi, just demonstrating chat, feel free to ignore. If she's online, she might reply. If not, she can ignore it, but at least she'll see that I didn't anticipate a meeting and a response. Now underneath here, you'll see in the chat, that's where I would type the chat. Click the A and it pops up a lot more space so I can write a much longer message. And I've got all sorts of formatting options here too. Other things, I can mark it as important. I can add an attachment to it. I can use smileys. I can use GIFs. I can use stickers, all sorts of other things. And I can give praise. I can do polls. I can do all sorts of things here in my chat. So that's a one-to-one chat, but of course I could also add somebody else to that chat by clicking the two people here, and then that would allow me to add a second person to the chat. So we've seen activity and then we've seen chat. Then we come to Teams. So this is kind of the meat and potatoes of the app, and this is where your teams, that's the teams themselves, live. So you'll see I've got four teams, 5 teams in my list here. My Shelley and Zeta team, this is the team I use with my virtual assistant Zeta. It's where we collaborate on all things that I need her to do for me. So if I have things for her to do about my newsletters, they go in the newsletter channel. If I have things that I would like her to do, like adding images to my blogs, they'll go in the blogs channel. And when I did a summit, I created a channel just for the summit. So I was a guest on that summit. I needed Zita to create things for me, and everything stayed in there. It just makes our communication so much easier. I've then got my Coffee Island team, which is one of my training teams. It's the one I use in my course called How to Use Microsoft Teams, and I use that team to demonstrate all sorts of things within that online course. I'm then a member of Veronica's team because I was testing out as Veronica how she set up a team and invited me in. And then I have my training team. So this is a team that I use if I want to deliver training and I want to invite people into the team so that we can have an interactive training session. So that's the teams, and I've also got the podcast team, and this is it. So the team itself has a general channel. Every team that's created is created with a general channel, and you can add as many channels as you want. So here I am in the general channel, and you'll see along the top we are in the posts section. So here is some conversation that I've been having with Jo, keeping her up to date on how many downloads the podcast there have been since we launched. This is coming up to the end of the first week, so I'm quite pleased with that. And if we want to ask each other questions, we can pop them in here, mention the other person, and then that sends a notification. Now there's also an app for your phone, and so it will come to me on my phone. So if I'm out and about, which during COVID we're not that much out and about, but here now in Israel we can be. I didn't mention up front I live in Israel, and our restrictions are now being lifted. So I can be working in the other room, not working at all, and still get my notifications on my phone. So that's the posts section. Within this I also have files, and I showed you the slide earlier of that, and it will take a moment to catch up with me, and then you'll be able to see in reality we have all of these areas. So we have an area to put the transcripts, to put the videos that we record from YouTube, the audio that I upload to my podcast host, show notes are created and stored here, working documents, things that we might want to work on, and I've got stats that I look at, and we've got our podcast guests, which is our main working document. And if I open that one up, just to show you, this is where Jo and I can update this. We've got a working list, we've got a list of our guest experts, our schedule, our topics, and then we've got our episode list where we keep track of who the next episode is, what date, and so on. So it's really, really easy to keep track of what we're doing. And we haven't got to collaborate by sharing that, finding it, updating it. It's all here in the team. So those files are held in a SharePoint site. Every team, each channel will get its own mini SharePoint site, which is where your documents, spreadsheets, presentations are stored. And that means it's shared with anybody who is a member. So every member has access to that, and anybody can work on it, which takes all the angst out of document collaboration. I've also got a wiki that comes with every team. I don't use it. I have a podcast plan. So the podcast plan is the planner app where I've created a plan, and I've shared this here with Jo, so we can keep track of where we're up to with each of our tasks. So with each episode, this is actually all done, so it's recorded, I can check that off, and I should move it to done later. I also have a podcast calendar. So this is a SharePoint calendar. It's where we keep track again of the podcast lists. You'll see it's labelled as SharePoint. I can come here to events and choose new event, and then I can schedule all the episodes in here. So at any time, if we don't want to look at the spreadsheet, we can come and look at the calendar. We also have a podcast notebook, and this lives online. If you open it, you can open it online. You don't open it actually inside of Teams. If you want to edit the notebook, it will allow you to edit here. That's new. And here I can go between the different pages, and this is where we started off making a page for each of our guests. where we can store everything that we need for each guest episode. So different ways of communication. We can add more tabs by clicking the plus, and you'll see that here there's a whole host of things that we could add. I'm not going to go into all of that. There's too many to choose from, and there are even more. And you can really make your team do what you want it to do and customize it for yourself. So that's all the different elements of it. But what else do we have? Well, down here we have the calendar, and you'll see this connects to my Outlook calendar. So this is my calendar. Here we are on in the working week view. So let's change that to week. You can see day, week, or working week. It's Sunday today when I record this. And if I move forward to next week, I can see my calendar. Now, if I want to create a meeting, I can create an instant meeting and invite somebody on the fly, or I can schedule a new meeting. And when I choose to schedule a new meeting, I'm just going to imaginatively call it new meeting about podcast. I'm just going to do this. I can choose the people I want to invite. So I'm going to invite Jo. There we go, it's found Jo. I've popped in her email address so I can invite her. I can schedule the meeting as I would expect. It doesn't repeat. And I could choose where we're going to host this meeting. Because Jo is a member of my team, in the podcast team, we can come into the podcast and say this meeting is going to take place right here in the channel, which means that Jo and I can both join right here in the channel when we have Teams open. It makes life a lot easier. And then we can add a location and type in any notes. I'm not actually going to send that because I don't really want to overload Jo with things she doesn't need to reply to. But I can also get access to the scheduling assistant. Now obviously it's only as good as your members, so it's not going to show me Jo's availability because she's not actually at tomorrow's VA. So this would just allow me to see when I'm free. But if you're working in a larger organisation, then that scheduling assistant will be very useful to you because it will show who's what. I'm going to discard that. But that's how I would create a meeting right there inside Teams. So now I'm going to bring across my Outlook calendar and I'm going to show you how I would set up a new Teams meeting from Outlook. When you saw the calendar in Teams, that was my calendar that you could see. Now I might be managing somebody else's calendar and I want to create a Teams meeting. So I'll click New Teams Meeting from their calendar. And then I can set up the meeting and you'll see it adds the Join Teams Meeting shortcut, which it would have done in Teams as well, but I didn't actually go so far as to create the meeting. There are some other things that you can do with this meeting in the meeting options, but now is not really the time to go into all of that. This is just an overview session. So from here I can say it's from Shelley at Tomorrow's VA, or it's from my Gmail account. I'm going to keep it at Tomorrow's VA, and I can send that meeting off to whoever I want, and they would just click that meeting and they would be able to join either inside of Teams if they're running Teams, or on the web, because I forgot to mention there's also a web version, which is rather handy. So that's how I can schedule a meeting from somebody else's calendar. So let me just pop that out the way. So that's the calendar. Next up we have the calls section. This is where I can call somebody else who's using Teams, whose details I have. So for example, Olivia was a trainee of mine. She was a team member. She is using Teams, but she's not available right now. And I could use the call to call her, and that will use voice over IP and call her right here in Teams. The same with Tim and all these people on this list. I then have the files option. So this is a bit more involved than the files that we saw in the channel. So I've got access to any recent files that I've had open. So remember, when you go into Word or Excel or PowerPoint, you have a list of recent files. Well, that's what this is, except it's everything. So it's all your Office 365 recent files. I've also got documents that I've opened recently in Microsoft Teams, and that will show those. So it's not everything, but anything that I've opened up inside of Teams. I've got downloads. If I've downloaded anything from Teams, it will keep track of it there. And then this OneDrive is my personal OneDrive. This is my OneDrive where I keep all of my stuff, and I can sort it A to Z. I don't know why it always comes in unsorted. It drives me insane, but there you go. I like things in an orderly fashion. And I can now get to any document anywhere from OneDrive. So I never need to leave Teams to get my work done, because I can work right here inside my files. And I've also connected up Dropbox, where I can connect Dropbox. I would need to sign in. I'm not going to do that right now because I really don't need to. But if I had things that I was sharing with somebody externally, then I could connect Dropbox or other cloud storage locations. If I click Add Cloud Storage, you'll see the other things that can be added. So if you're not using Dropbox, you're not using OneDrive, perhaps you're using Google Drive or Box or ShareFile, you can add those too. And Microsoft are adding more storage locations all the time. We then have the three dots here. These are apps that I have added to Teams. I've kind of signed up to an account with them, and I've brought them into Teams so that I can now add them in any channel at any time. And again, now is not the time to go through all of that. So that was a whistle-stop overview of Microsoft Teams. If I come back to my podcast team, there's my posts, there are my files, and I'm working here with Joe, who is not at my organisation, and it all works really, really well. I hope you enjoyed learning all about Microsoft Teams, what it is, and that whistle-stop tour of how it works. And I just wanted to let you know about what else you can do with me. Well, you could get my course called How to Use Microsoft Teams. It's a step-by-step tutorial videos, and you'll discover how to create a team, how to add channels and simplify your communication so that your inbox can breathe. You will find out how to invite members, both internal and external, into your team, and you'll be able to manage tasks, messages and project updates in one space with one tool. You will also be able to work collaboratively and more efficiently with your clients and colleagues, and you'll keep posts, conversations and documents all in one place and be super organised. And finally, you'll be able to work in Teams without having to jump in and out of other applications. So what else, what have I got in store for you? I have a special 15% discount for Executive Secretary members. You can head over to coursedirectory.tomorrowsva.com, find the How to Use Microsoft Teams course and use the coupon code EXECSEC at checkout. That will apply a 15% discount. And in the screenshot here, I've shown you where to add that coupon code because it kind of hides, and I've had a couple of people miss it. So it's a little blue line, it says redeem code. So do remember that will give you 15% off. How can you keep in touch with me? Well, on Twitter, I'm at Shelley Fishel or at Tomorrow's VA. You can find me on LinkedIn, I'm Shelley Fishel there. You can email me, shelley@tomorrowsva.com, or you can find the courses on the course directory. There's also Instagram, Pinterest, and any other social network that you can think of, because I'm probably there. And that's all that remains to be said is thank you for your time today. I do hope it's been useful. Leave a comment on the video to let me know how useful it is, and I'll make sure that all the links you need are in the description of the video. See you on another admin chat later this year.